I have played a game that has lit a fire under me. A game that is so dynamic and addictive that I had trouble putting it down throughout my first 60-hour playthrough. A game I continually want to go back to and try new things and right the mistakes I made my first time around. A game that made me break my long hiatus from YouTube to make this very video. A Super Famicom RPG from 1993 called Romancing Saga 2. The Saga series is a unique set of games published by Square Enix that has been around just about as long as the Final Fantasy series. Yet Final Fantasy is a worldwide household name, while the Saga series is only really well recognized in its home country of Japan. Still, several games have seen North American releases, starting with the very first Saga game, which was released on the Nintendo Game Boy under the name The Final Fantasy Legend outside of Japan to capitalize on the Final Fantasy branding that had already been established with the NES release of Final Fantasy. North America would get the next two Saga games under the titles The Final Fantasy Legend 2 and 3. If you like older turn-based RPGs, I do recommend giving these a shot with the help of a guide, as the first two especially do some really interesting things with party development and stat growth, such as being able to freely build your party and having different development for different races. The second game is an especially neat experience, but the third game was developed by a different team, the same team that was behind the Final Fantasy Mystic Quest game for Super Nintendo, and ditches the unique stat growth for more traditional experience points. If you're interested in these, you can get all three games in the Saga collection, which regularly goes on sale. After completion of the Final Fantasy Legend 2, Akitoshi Kawazu, the creator of the Saga series, went on to lead a team that set out to create the first Saga game for the soon-to-be-released Super Famicom system. This game would be titled Romancing Saga, and would allow the player to choose between 8 characters and explore the world in a non-linear way, offering loads of replayability, which would become a staple of the Saga series. The first Romancing Saga game was well received, and development soon began on the next game. Kawazu wanted to provide the player with a revolving cast of party members while making sure the player continued to keep their progress and also still allow the player to explore the world in a non-linear way. Romancing Saga 2 would be released on the Super Famicom in 1993, just 1 year after the first Romancing Saga, and would become the best-selling title in the Romancing Saga trilogy. But outside of Japan, it wouldn't be released until 2016, when a translated mobile port hit the market. This would later be ported to PC and consoles, which is where I first heard about it. I was instantly intrigued, but I didn't touch the game until about a month ago, when I scooped it up on sale. I found Romancing Saga 2 incredibly hard to put down, and after 60+ hours of what I can best describe as a Saga crash course, I finally defeated the final boss, and really haven't been able to forget about it since. But why? What about this 31-year-old game has made such an impression on me? Let's start with the music. From the grand, sweeping opening theme, to the driving battle music, and everything in between, composer Kenji Ito went out of his mind to produce a suite of music that infiltrates your brain and takes root, constantly popping up in your head at random as you go about your day, long after you shut the game down. Or how about the charming pixel art that pops off the screen? When the original Romancing Saga 2 was released on the Super Famicom, the colors were more muted and flat, but the remaster goes back over everything with a more vivid color palette. The story is simple, but it gets the job done. There are 7 heroes who once saved the world, but the citizens eventually grew so fearful of the heroes that they sealed them away. Now the 7 heroes have returned and aim to destroy those who put them away and rule over the land of which they once fought to protect. The Emperor Leon and his 2 sons, Victor and Gerard, begin to prepare to defend their kingdom when Victor, Leon's most battle-tested son, is killed by one of the 7 heroes. Leon and Gerard set off to take down said hero, but Leon also ends up falling to this hero, leaving Gerard as Emperor. All of that is great, but there are a lot of games that fit that motif. What's much more paramount to me anyway, is the dynamic gameplay Kawazu and his team laid down here. On the surface, Romancing Saga 2 presents as a typical Final Fantasy-esque turn-based RPG, but digging deeper, you start to get a feel for the amount of possibilities the player has in the way they approach the game. Firstly, there's the roguelite nature of the game as a whole. You see, whenever your party gets wiped out in Romancing Saga 2, it's very rarely game over. Instead, the game will prompt you to select a new emperor from a short list that the game curates, thus giving you a new main character and, sometimes, forcing you to go outside of your comfort zone, which is really what this game is all about: experimentation. Some of the bigger annoyances with Romancing Saga 2 do come in the way that you recruit your party. When it's time to form a new party, you have to find each class member that you want to recruit and talk to them. Between this, equipping your party with weapons and armor, and teaching them new skills, building your party can take anywhere from 15 to 30 minutes, depending on how far across the map you have to travel to find the party member that you want. If there is any silver lining here, it's that it breaks up the action of the gameplay loop and gives you some room to breathe. But I'm guessing most people would rather just have one place to build their party from, like it seems to work in the Romancing Saga 2 remake, coming in just a few days at the time of the publishing of this video. When you get a new emperor, the skill levels that you've earned to that point continue on to the new emperor. But depending on the class, that doesn't mean that you'll do the same amount of damage as the previous emperor in any particular skill. Instead, the game encourages you to adhere to the class. This means that it may be beneficial for you to vary your emperor choices early in the game instead of picking the same class over and over again because of the global leveling system, which essentially raises the level of enemies in the world according to how many battles you've partaken in. So if you avoid certain classes early on, you may get to a point where the game only gives you those certain classes that you haven't been leveling up skills in. Luckily, you can still build out the rest of your party how you'd like, and most classes have a few weapons that they are particularly good with. Formations are a huge part of Romancing Saga 2, as they not only offer placement strategy for your party, but certain formations will give buffs and debuffs, depending on where the party member is slotted in the formation. You can also unlock new formations by using different classed emperors and talking to the formation captain in Castle Avalon. I cannot stress enough how vital formations are, as some give benefits like being able to guard until everyone has taken their turn, and being able to have everyone in your party attack first. Battles take a different approach than normal in a few different ways. First off, your party's HP fully generates after each battle. Honestly, this is one of my favorite things about Romancing Saga, as I hate HP management. I feel like it's more burdensome than it is fun, especially when you're trying to explore the game world without a guide. So what happens if your party members fall to 0 HP in battle? Well, they'll lose 1 life point from a set of LP that is usually determined by the party member's class. If they lose all of their LP from their pool, then they will be dead. You will have to replace them in your party. But the worrying doesn't stop just because they've lost all their HP in a battle. Downed party members are still prone to being targeted by enemies. And if they do get hit while they're down, they will lose 1 life point for each enemy that attacks them, meaning that you should probably prioritize reviving those fallen party members, which can be done with basic healing spells and items. Again, if your party member hits 0 LP, then you'll have to recruit a new party member to fill their spot. And if everyone in the party loses their HP, then it'll be time to choose a new emperor and form a completely new party from scratch. But again, all classes will maintain the levels that they've gained for their weapon proficiency to that point, and skills can be taught to anyone once they've been unlocked. Which leads me to perhaps my favorite part of Romancing Saga 2's battle system, the way characters earn new skills. Each character has a glimmer type, which is a hidden chart of which skills the character can learn from certain weapon types. Even with the classes, different characters within those classes will be able to learn different skills. During battle, a character will have a certain percentage chance to learn a skill by using a certain move. This is also hidden, although the chance is greater when facing a boss, so you may see it happen more often then. When a character has learned a new skill, a light bulb will appear above their head, followed by the name of the move, and the character will then use that new move without using up any skill points. The character will then have the skill to use until they die. But here's the cool part. You can now teach that move to any of your party members back at your castle. This is a huge benefit for things like evading status effect type moves like hypnosis. Once you learn that skill, you can equip it to every party member and never have to worry about them falling asleep in battle again. There are a lot of other cool things about Romancing Saga 2, like being able to earn money and unlock services by investing in research developments for your kingdom, but stuff like that could probably use its own video. The dynamic nature of Romancing Saga 2 is summed up for me in a simple anecdote. Fairly early on in my first playthrough, I had only dabbled with spear users, but they were far from a staple in my party. While exploring a dungeon, I got a random weapon drop, the Poseidon Spear, which was at that point for me my most powerful weapon in my arsenal with an attack of 38. At first, I was able to equip my Emperor with this weapon and glimmer some useful spear skills, but eventually I had to pick a new Emperor, one that wasn't a natural spear user, and that forced my hand to diversify and recruit a spear user for my party, giving them the Poseidon Spear and forcing me to focus on glimmering some skills with other weapons. I ended up glimmering even more very powerful spear skills with my side party member, and by the final boss, I was using 2 spear users in my party as they had become my biggest damage dealers. Had I not gotten that original weapon drop, my experience would have likely been uniquely different. This also extends to classes. There were a few classes I got locked out of, such as the Salamander and Mermaid classes, because of the way that I handled the different quests. Had I been able to unlock those classes, who knows what assembly my final party would have looked like. All of this leads to an inner drive to want to master the game, learn all of its secrets, and then create new strategies for several different playthroughs. Does Romancing Saga 2 have its frustrating moments and archaic ways of handling stuff? Sure, it's a game from 1993 after all. I do recommend using some guides, not so much to tell you what to do in what order, but more for knowing which classes are capable of what and how to go about finding new classes. But if you're tired of pedestrian, linear RPG experiences, I recommend giving this gem a shot. At the very least, check out the demo of the remake, which I can say with certainty that they nailed the feel of the original game while making some much needed quality of life improvements, and I can't wait to dive into the full game as soon as I can.